Alrighty. Before we get into things proper, we of course have to do our audio sync test because this streamer really likes to get audio desynced. So, let's put her on this real quick. Really likes to get audio desynced. And sync. Alright, we're good. Alright, enough of that. So, hi! Today we're doing something a little different. We're not going to be playing 14. We're going to be talking about 14 and my experiences with it. So we're just going to have this in the background, listening to orchestrion, just play normal songs for now. But we're going to be talking about what the title says, about getting caught up, in quotes. Because as anyone who has seen developments on the channel in the past few weeks, Raid Group finally was able to beat the Raid tier. 08 Savage, Sigmascape, V4, whichever you'd like to call it. And we're going to talk about what it feels like to do it. Now, we're going to exclude Ultimate as being at endgame, because that's a bit out of my reach right now. So we're just gonna push that aside for the time being. But anyway, so let's start off with the feeling. We'll start out with the first part of the feeling of being caught up. Now, this is a personal feeling for me. I'm sure it can be echoed amongst other people. But we will start as most people would in any given MMO with any strong amount of endgame. So, little baby new player, could be me, you, anybody. They start up their new character. They're doing their thing, and of course, inevitably, you're going to see players with some unimaginably high level of gear, some silly emotes you don't have access to, mounts, minions, etc. And that creates the feeling of envy, jealousy, but most importantly, desire to get up to that level. And some players more than others have that feeling to actually get caught up to that. And they do, slowly or faster than others, more quickly. And there's certain milestones. You get through your main story, so you have, and in tandem with that, you get to certain level caps. You get appropriate gear for that. And you can, for the minimum, you're getting there. Like, for example, obviously, as it was shown through my streams of this game of 14, I was pretty much guided through my whole experience of 14 through groups of friends. Like, I started off immediately inducted into a free company with all sorts of benefits, experienced players that can help me out, mainly teach me how to do the role that I picked, tank, to assist me with some high quality healing and whatnot. And I will be forever grateful for what they were able to teach me in my time of the game. And after they moved on to other places, I had to fend for myself eventually. And what eventually has been molded and evolved through various experiences to what I am today. That being your slightly above average tank. And overall, above average everything else, but tooting my own horn a bit. But yeah, your first milestone, getting through the story, getting your character to level cap. Then you probably at that point, if you're like me, you probably get a bit tired of that one role, that one job you've been playing for who knows how long, and you want to switch it up. So you try leveling another job or another role to learn, and if there's anything that I've learned, that you can gain a great amount of experience from trying out another role. Like I wouldn't be the tank that I am today if I didn't understand the feeling of what it is to be a healer or a DPS, what they have to go through to get through a fight. What stress they have to deal with, what eases, what difficulties. And having viewpoints from all three of those can definitely enlighten your primary role a lot more. So eventually you get to the point you're just going along, you've reached the end of the story, you're just kind of casually leveling all the other jobs. And eventually, through who knows how long, it varies from player to player. For me, it's taken a good year and a half plus now to get all of the combat jobs to cap. And through all the various experiences that's come from, whether it's been through the duty finder, with doing stuff with friends, and gearing those jobs through various methods, whether it's just farming up currencies, having them crafted, or getting it from higher end stuff. And speaking of higher end stuff, that's where we're going to move into next. In that most players will probably at some point start to realize, mainly the more casual players, like I was for the longest time, they'll grow tired of the endless leveling roulettes, the random other roulettes, whatnot, just doing the same stuff over and over again ad nauseum. And eventually you kind of wonder if there's anything else you can do. And in this game, well, there's the higher end content. There's the extreme trials. And eventually you get to raiding. Now, for me personally, so as is known, this is my first MMO I've gone really hard into. And the notion of raiding was always a odd concept for me, because the only things I ever heard about raiding was that it was something for the best of the best MMO players. Like, it tests everything you got. Something that can take weeks and months to get, like, a fight down. Like, that was absolutely daunting to me. And whether it was true or not, depending on who you were talking to, that's the kind of stuff that puts the fear into you. The, oh god, there's no way that I could ever be good enough to do that. And that's what I felt for the most part when it came to the higher end stuff. Like, friends would always tell me of the horrors of certain fights, of like how much of a slog, how much cooperation you'd need with your group, and how skilled you had to be. Again, examples like, oh, the poison from, I think it was T7, and of course the legendary, infamous, if even, dive bombs from Twintania. And it was because of that I shrugged off doing raiding for the longest period of time, because I felt that there's no way I'd ever be good enough to do it. And, well, eventually, group got together. It's like, hey, you want to, like, try doing coil? It's like, oh, okay. And so we did. We went into binding coil. We went in level synced. We didn't do minimum item level, but we went in item synced to, level synced to see what the fuss is all about. What what this grand adventure into the raiding scene was like back then. And as it turns out, it really wasn't that bad. I guess I kinda undersold at least my abilities, because I personally didn't feel it was too difficult. Granted, I mean, we're just level synced, not at minimum item level, so we got big beefy item level for the time. Like, it was in like past full poetic gear, and Ironworks were like at 60 gear, so you know. But I mean, in certain fights, mechanics are what matters. Like, for example, with Twintania's twisters and dive bombs, you get hit by one of those, you're dead. No amount of item level is going to stop that, and that's something that's carried over into Ultimate. So, we slog through it, and eventually we get through T5, the infamous T5. Legendary Twintania finally taken down, and it was an accomplishment. It felt really good to have downed something that, back in the day, geez, I don't know how long it took to clear turn 5. Granted, twisters were broken back then, and obviously nerfs happened. People didn't have the item levels that we did now, but regardless of that, it felt accomplishing. Despite, like, having people coach you through it, watching guides and whatnot. And that's something I was always doing back then. I was always watching guides on content before going into it. And at the time, that was fine, because I didn't want to be that guy that didn't know what they were doing. I didn't want to be the guy to hold everybody back because, what's this ability do? Oh, it kills me. Oh, there goes the whole raid. But yeah. But after doing that, there was some renewed confidence, because we continued going on, got through only the next two, T6 and T7. Never really got a chance to go into T8, because then the raid group kind of broke up due to various reasons, people not showing up, emotions, stuff like that. Not something I'm going to go into here. So that was my introduction to raiding, and despite doing arguably more difficult content, I still never really touched the extreme primals. I never went into Ifrit Extreme, Garuda, Titan, Leviathan, Moogle, anything like that. The only extreme we ever did was Ultimate Weapon, Minstrel's Ballad, Ultima's Bane. And we pulled through that, though, I mean, all honesty, Ultimate Weapon Extreme isn't that hard. Like, looking back on it. Neither was, like, T5 in terms of mechanics, but, you know, that's a Realm Reborn content, and comparable to Heaven's Word at the time was definitely a step up and step down in terms of mechanical complexity. And yeah, despite all that, never really touched the extremes until, geez, I don't even know what the first time was I ever stepped into freaking Garuda Extreme, the freaking, like, probably easiest of the original extremes. And I just eventually grew tired of it just sitting there uncompleted, so like most people, I went in unsynced and did it just to get it off the list. Because I could never find anybody to actually run it synced to experience the challenge, so just did it and moved on. It wasn't until quite a while later, until I eventually, once people just kind of moved on, I was like, you know what? I want to do these higher end fights, specifically in Heaven's Word at the time. So I went in with, like, people saying, like, oh, you can do this even sync nowadays real easy. We did Ravana, Bismarck, Like, those were no big deal, because those are pretty easy fights, especially at the time with the item levels. Like, you'd never see frickin' Swift Liberation in Ravana. Bismarck, you downed really quickly, because, you know, Extreme's much easier than normal mode, at least in my opinion, and in many people's opinions. Let's see. What happened next? I think it was eventually moved on to the actual difficult fights of Heaven's Word, like Thordan Plus. And one day I wanted to try and clear Thordan, because I always thought Thordan was a cool fight. Put together, I don't know if I put together the learning party or someone else did, whatever the point is. Learned Thordan, eventually got through it, and when we got through it, lo and behold, good old Round Lanner drops, and I get my first bird, first rare mount, and that's what really kinda got me into doing harder content. It was then I learned I really like collecting mounts. After we got through Thordan, like, the group I was with, like, y'all want to, like, try and do Nidhogg Extreme next? And they're like, sure, I don't actually know anything about Nidhogg Extreme, but sure, let's go learn that from scratch. Through trials and tribulations, we learned a fair amount of Nidhogg, and I don't know how long it actually took us to get through it. It was several sessions. Eventually get through Nidhogg. And like, oh man, Nidhogg. Friggin' war flashbacks. Because that one took a while to get down. Not as long as, say, Zervin, but that was due to incompetence on mainly the party's part. Blech, party's part. Me stumbling all over my words. I don't usually just talk to stream, and normally I'm playing, but that's what this is about. Let's see. So after Nidhogg, then of course came the Warring Triad. And oh boy! Now, much like T5 and Realm Reborn Primals for their extreme versions, Sephiroth was always a fight that I was told, oh man, frickin' Sephiroth is like the worst. He'll frickin' deck you in the schnoz for way more than your health. Like I barely would survive, like, certain amounts. I'd hear that all the time. Then I go in there, and yeah, definitely he does hurt. Them uncasted tank busters, always a fun time. And my learning of Sephiroth was actually on Paladin, despite my absolute adoring love of Dark Knight. I think the party I was in already had a Dark Knight, or it had a warrior, I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't want to play Dark Knight right there and then, so I was learning Paladin. As many know, Paladin was not the best in Heaven's Word, due to various bouts of reasons. The problems with tank swapping, overall low kind of DPS, stance is not the best thing. And, of course, the glaring flaw in the room that plagued it all throughout the entire expansion was Paladin had nothing for magic damage. So anything that did magical tank busters, absolute bane of Paladins. And yet, I found myself main tanking Sephiroth, a kind of half and half physical, magical boss. So I had to learn this odd kind of rotation for Sheltroning his physical tank busters, whilst just crying when his magical ones came out. And of course, Sephiroth being undoubtedly one of the most difficult primals in the game to date to do, even unsynced nowadays due to coordination issues. Because you get one person that messes up in phase 2, your whole group's wiped. So, needless to say, that took a while to get down. Get through that, move on to Sophia. Sophia went pretty quickly, because she's super forgiving. And then, oh man, the slog that was trying to get a group to clear Zervin. Because, you know, the old mentality. Skip Soar, disband, because, you know, people can't do a very simple mechanic like Soar. Now, the group that I eventually got to clear, we did do Soar, because it's really easy. You just split up into Cardinals and Inner Cardinals, and you squeeze in slightly. It's real easy. Got that down. Then, once I had all the fights learned, then came, alright. This was, like, of course, obviously it's gotta be like 3.5, because when Zervin came out. So the big ol' Firebird came out, the big ol' Mega Bird mount. It was like, I want that bird. I really want that bird, but I need to get all these birds first. And thus came the long drawn out time of collecting all those birds. Skipping through all the nonsense, the note that getting Nidhogg was especially troublesome in getting that mount, had to actually buy that mount. But skipping through all that, I get myself my Firebird. Big feels good. That's an accomplishment. And that's definitely another milestone, is getting something that is envy worthy. And thus my lust to collect all mounts really went into full swing. And it was there then where the idea of doing a Savage really started to dig into my mind. We had tried to do Savage Alexander as a group, but much like doing Coil, that kind of fell apart. And I eventually learned, wait a minute, these Savage things, these Savage fights drop mounts, interest builds. And so, after everyone kind of goes their separate ways, I try to get some groups together to get in there and learn these extremely hard fights. So first off was doing A4S, Manipulator Savage, and oh man, doing that. I forget if I did that unsynced at 70 or if I did it at 60. I think I did it at 60, but it was, of course, with 270 gear, so we had some bulk in there. Man, that was a lot to get through. Coordinating to do the standardized sacrifice strat into the Royal Pentacles. That took a few tries to get down, as well as killing all of the Straff dolls, or whatever they're called, the little mini Fausts. Until we do that, like, I think we ended up doing it 10 times in terms of clears, because we lost and gained a couple people here and there in that party. Until everybody got their Gobwalker mount, and I love the Gobwalker. I collected that. Then the eyes were set on to the big boy, the entire raid's finisher, A12S. That also took a hot minute to get through. And with the clutchest eventual clear of mine, where I went on Warrior, a class that I barely knew how to play, and got through that. I was the last one alive, frickin' one fell cleave to rule them all. Killed Alex Prime, and I mean, little humble boasting about that, but moving on. got that one clear, got super lucky, got the mount drop, and then we couldn't clear it again, and the pug disbanded. And I was like, okay, well, at least I got my mount, am I right? But yeah, so I gained a couple mounts here and there from Savage. I make an attempt at doing A8 Savage, but dear Lord, Brute Justice is not a forgiving man. So I just kind of gave up on that for now. Besides, it's only a minion, doesn't even drop him out. But enough of all that. I get doing all these past Savage tiers. They're not, I mean, they're nice to have the mounts and all, but I want to get in there and actually do it for the fun, do the challenge of it, feel what it's like to actually do something on content. So, Stormblood has rolled around at this point. And I get caught up, and I'm geared enough to actually do the Savage Deltascape at the time. And I make my attempts that we have, like, semi-standard group nowadays to go through Savages. We get all that we do, 1, 2, and 3, get that down as a group. But can never really get anybody together to do V4S, X-Death, and Neo X-Death. So, eventually, like, scheduling conflicts happen. Eventually, I'm like, you know, I'm not gonna get this clear if I just keep waiting for everybody. So I eventually, like, when there's no one really around, I go in and try to do it with pugs. Do fairly well. I was able to see Neo X Death get in there. Through learning upon learning, we were able to get to Grand Cross Omega, but weren't able to actually clear before the next patch dropped. Which is a shame, because I really, really wanted the mount from V4S. I freaking Ultraroid the big snake, that noodle, I want him so bad. I still don't got him. But we're gonna get in there eventually. So that happens. We're catching up to more modern day now. Then 4.2 hits. Sigmascape. It's then me and friends, where we seriously want to, like, really get into raiding, so we form a static. Something that I never thought I would ever get into. Because much like hearing mumbles of raiding in the past, the idea of a static was an extremely foreign concept for me. Because I'd only hear of, like, you know, the high-end statics that raid for, like, 12 hours a day. They freaking go hard. They're, like, super coordinated. And it's just something I never thought I could do, but despite that, we put one together. We obviously don't have the longest raid schedule. We only raid, like, 2.5 hours a night, 2 nights a week, so definitely not hardcore at all. We're really a casual mid-core, and with that very limited time frame, we slowly work through Sigmascape Savage, Phantom Train, Chatternook. Oh boy, Guardian took a minute, but we got through that, and then finally we're at the last fight. V8S, O8S, Sigma, V4, Kefka. We spend a hot minute trying to get through normal Kefka until one fateful day we finally beat that DPS check with our kinda below average DPS. And we finally get to God Kefka. And that's where we really had to focus down to do it. So we start working out. We really focus down on the things that make a good raid group. Like, had to teach a few people how to do things correctly, getting optimal uptime, doing some freaking coordinated buffs and whatnot, countdowns, I don't know, and getting optimal food, potions, stuff that I never really cared for in the past, because it's been known that I'm not the biggest fan of temporary buffs. Anything that runs out in any period of time, I just don't like it. I don't know. I won't go into detail, but like stuff like potions and food, those are things that I like, because I'm not a crafter, so I can't make those, so I'd have to buy them. And not the richest person in the game, so getting potions and food at high quality hurts the wallet. And yeah. So it was a careful balancing act of how much I needed for each individual raid attempt, while still keeping a fair amount of money in the bank for whatever frivolous other reason. But through trial and error, excuse me, you eventually get to the point where, I mean, we're getting wipe after wipe, getting slightly further each time. It's where I kind of decide, like, you know, it would benefit us if we had recordings of our attempts at God Kefka, so I start to stream our attempts, at least our significant attempts. There's a few VODs that have just been lost over time because they weren't progress or anything. And that's how came to birth the Enragers Versus series, showing our progression through the fight, like with voice comms and everything. Because that's something I would like when watching like streams of other people progging. I'd always notice that there's never any voice comms. It's mainly just the streamer talking. You can't hear their Discord, their team at all talking or strategizing. And I feel that's a bit detrimental for people watching because they can't really understand the thought processes of the entire group. So with consent from the static, I broadcast pretty much everything. The all voice comms, all of our downtime, all of our highs and lows for the most parts of the VODs that actually matter. And that's how we've learned. By watching all of our mistakes, seeing what we can and can't get away with, and all that stuff. Which, no, we're not moving on to that just yet, but eventually, over time, we get there slowly and slowly, until, of course, the one fateful day when we finally get her down. Finally get that God Kefka clear, and oh boy, was we happy. And that right there, at least as far as casual midcore is concerned, my final milestone in terms of getting caught up. Like, finally there's, like, pushing Ultimate aside again, there is really not much to anything left of battle content in the game to do. I say battle content because, you know, crafting and gathering was pushed that aside too. Not as important to me. I'll still do it, but yeah. But yeah, that's all of that cumulative effort, all the way from back, God, it's been so long now, from this good old baby meta to where we are now, finished raiding with static meta. One of the better tanks that I've seen and what others have said, you know, bragging aside. Becoming what some could say as good players, at least a little bit. But anyway, that's the first part of what I want to talk about. You know, it's only been 35 minutes of me recollecting my entire progress through this game. Now to move on to the other half, which was talking about that accomplishment, talking about our clear of the latest raid tier, wherein I will now throw up our clear VOD and kind of talk through it. Now, this is something I've seen other people do, where they would slowly talk about their clear of a fight. Maybe not like as much of a guide per se, but just explaining how they do each individual mechanic and what goes on thought process wise. So this is by far definitely not an original idea of mine. I'm definitely copying this from other people, but you know, I just wanted to do it myself, offer my own perspective, and be able to like talk about like the raid members and whatnot. So I'm going to throw up the display capture. Bam. And we're just gonna go through this little bit by bit. And to accompany it, I have also prepared a crude drawing of the God Kefka arena in paint using my amazing artistic skills. And we're just gonna kind of show the fight from an overhead standpoint. Just to show how everybody does things. So it's kind of like a guide, but it's gonna be really slow paced. It's gonna be so people can really keep up and whatnot. But anyway, so let's start through this. So this is just the God Kefka part. I just cut off the normal Kefka because that's not important. You've seen that enough in the VODs. So let's full screen this and get it going. So we starts out with our pull. As you saw with the paint drawing, I put all of our markers there as we have it. So one thing to note right away this is good for mostly melee people, is to pop sprint ahead of time so you can get to the boss even closer. Because where we are right now, we're right at the edge of his aggro range, which is something that I always like to establish before we really go hard into a fight, is finding out how close can you get before the boss pulls. It's not the most important detail to have, but it's probably like maybe one extra auto attack, but that extra auto attack from 4 melee people, it adds up in the end. It's not very much DPS, probably, I don't know, I don't even know how to calculate it. But yeah, that's one thing ahead of time. Especially, like, for me and Dax, my co-tank, is just to get there as fast as possible, to get damage in, especially for tanks, getting as much aggro as soon as possible. So, you know, some people can't steal aggro. Certain, special people. But yeah, so, precast me, Holy Spirit, pop my pot, start wailing away at him. Alright, so right now, for people who are unawares, so first thing Kefka does after a couple of auto attacks is Heartless Angel, which will reduce the entire party's health to 1. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts, that's it. Which is a generally good which the general following strat is to, of course, heal that up as soon as possible. Especially because the next thing he does is an Ultima cast. And Ultima, if any with those familiar with Final Fantasy history, very, very strong magic spell. And they just kind of throws them left and right in here. Which, it's interesting to point out, because back in A Realm Reborn, when you're fighting Ultima Weapon, your big threat is the spell Ultima, where it just completely obliterates you. It destroys freaking all of Praetorium. But here, it's just casual raid damage. I mean, it's not really casual. It hurts quite a bit, especially if unmitigated, which is where all these beautiful shields and regens are for. So yeah, you get reduced to 1 HP, and then he does a raid damage. Really hard on healers. Especially because the next thing he does is his Tank Buster, Hyperdrive. Wherein Dax is going to home gang it. So he has, like, very little protection right now. And that's important to note because... So, in normal Kefka, Hyperdrive is simple Tank Buster, nothing more. In his God version, Hyperdrive, it still hits hard, but it also applies a bleed to whoever it hits. And that bleed's damage is calculated based upon how much damage the Hyperdrive does. Obviously, there is an upper limit to how much the bleed can do, but with no mitigation, it's going to do a fair bit, but with a high bit of mitigation, it will actually tick for a lot lower. So right now, all Dax has is a Divine Benison from Lily and our White Mage. So that bleed is going to hurt quite a bit, especially since that Hyperdrive is going to take pretty much his entire health bar. Now, whilst this is casting, I provoke to do a tank swap so he doesn't get autoed immediately afterwards. That way, his bleed can just tick away and not have to worry about additional ticks from the auto attacks. So, I provoke, he shirks. As soon as I see the thing hit, I run through him. Because, you know, as soon as the cast bar finishes, that means the mechanic has been executed. So I just run right through, even if there's an animation right there. I know I won't be hit. I run right between his legs and get in front of him. I apply my one little bits of dots, and then do Requiescat so I can do some range damage. One thing, especially for tanks to be considered, I throw up Rampart during this part, because this is going to hit me quite a bit. There's the damage of the stack marker and then immediately into auto attacks. And Soraya, our Astro, has made it very apparent several times that this is a very tight bit of healing. So the extra mitigation Rampart gives me helps quite a bit. Now, moving over to Yonder freaking paint drawing. Here we're going to go into a Celestriad. What's going on right now in the video? Where right now it's just a big old blurry explosion. So, let's see here. Let's do a red ring here for... Let's see. Do this. So, we have Kefka, like, right here. Like, take this is Kefka right now. So, what initially will come out is this big old plus pattern, which is going to be the lightning. So, I can't... We'll use this as our plus. No, that's not right. So, imagine this is the big old plus sign. So that's our 4 cardinal directions. So he can't be there. What will be immediately afterwards is an inner circle, freaking whatever colors. Next is a small circle, which is going to be the first ice hit. Now these appear simultaneously, so they'll both explode at the same time. So you can't be anywhere within this orange circle, because that's gonna blow up. You get as much as you can in terms of damage on Kefka, and then you run out. You have 3 DPS spread out over here. You have 1 DPS here, and you got the rest of everybody right here, basically. This circle isn't anywhere close to being accurate whatsoever. Stop. I hate paint. It's the worst. But yeah, then after this appears shortly after is a much bigger purple circle, which is visible right here, and that's the secondary ice. So after the orange one explodes, you gotta move in so the purple one doesn't hit you. You keep spread out like this because there's the stack marker is going to be on a healer, so the tanks and healers stack up to share that damage, whereas the 3 other DPS will be getting individual hits of fire that do splash damage, so they spread out. And that's Celestriad. We move over to, again, let's put a little, we move over to about here, wherein we just get our hits. He does a few autos and does an Ultima cast, so raid damage. Hopefully I survive. And as soon as that Ultima finished casting, what I will do is I will run down to where 2 is, because at this point I of course have aggro, main tank at this point. I need to move Kefka into the middle. So I will come down to 2, and as soon as I hit 2, I'll double back through, because when I reach 2, Kefka will be in the middle. So I run to 2, I double back through and turn him around, so he'll be perfectly placed in the center, or at least I would hope more or less. And this is important for the mechanics to follow up. We'll watch that play out. So I hit 2, I double back. And here's where we get to the first big boy of the fight, the reoccurring mechanic known as Forsaken. This is similar to the Grand Crosses from Neo X-Death, wherein it's a menagerie of mechanics thrown together, in addition with a whole lot of damage. So Forsaken must be reprisalled, addled as you see down here, because it does a lot of damage. Mitigation is key here. So this is going to explode, have like the coolest freaking visual and audio effect in the game. Now I reprisal it, and as soon as I see this effect start happening, him rising up to the air, I'll throw up a Divine Veil. Now, you might probably be wondering, why didn't I put up Veil beforehand to mitigate the Forsaken hit? Well, the reason is because the shields from Veil will prove useful for the following mechanics. I throw up Veil there because I know, undoubtedly, that my healers are going to be throwing out AoE heals to get everybody back up. So, it'll auto-pop. Nothing I gotta worry about whatsoever. 7 out of 8 people get shields, and they'll be good. They'll be good to go for the next couple mechanics. So, the first Forsaken starts out as such. You'll have 3 of these meteor circles in the middle, and 4 tethered mad heads to each of your DPS, provided they are all alive, which of course they are. So, each of these 3 circles must have at least 2 people in them in order to satisfy them. Yeah, we'll keep that. We'll assume Kefka's right there. And we'll put our 3 circles here, and we'll put our friggin' heads out here, because they'll spawn like anywhere around these 4 quadrants. So that's the start off. The basic information: each of these circles need 2 people in them each, no more, no less, to satisfy. When these circles explode, as long as there's 2 people in them, they do no damage, 0. If there's nobody in them, they'll explode and put a damage down on the raid and do damage. So, we have our 4 people tethered. So the people that are tethered have to explode those heads in order to get rid of them, otherwise they'll explode raid wide, And I think they also give a damage down, or they just do a lot of damage, I'm not sure. Point is, you don't want them to explode. Now, whilst this is all happening, Kefka is casting Heartless Archangel. Now, Heartless Angel, he only uses once, and that just reduces your health to 1, and is no big deal. Archangel, on the other hand, behaves slightly differently. Wherein, if the entire party's, or any player for that matter, if their health is not topped off by around the time this cast reaches like 3/4 of the way full, because of how server ticks work and snapshotting, everybody's going to have their health reduced to 1, like before, but they will also all receive a debuff called Incurable, which, as the name suggests, makes it so you cannot receive healing for its duration. Now, if you're topped off, this debuff lasts 4 seconds, and it'll be gone in no time. If you're not at full HP, it will last 10 seconds. This is important because these heads, they need to blow up, and everybody's going to be at 1 HP. So, you want your health at max so you can get healed faster, so you can run into your heads and they blow up. Now, the way we do these heads is apparently the way pugs do it. One of the pugs that are brave enough to do Savage content is, as you'll see here, we do this kind of crisscross pattern. So, we'll have each pair of DPS that have the farthest distance from their head go into the circles, so they'll explode, do no damage. We'll have our healers in the middle, because it makes sense for them to be there, because they have the optimal range to heal. And once the meteors explode in the middle, tanks collapse in, so they don't get hit by the crisscrossing heads right here. Everybody's incurable buffs are gone now. So everybody's going to get a heal and then run into their head, which is shown right about now. Yeah. About the time that the heads explode, Kefka will do his next mechanic, which is Wings of Destruction, which has 3 variants to it. The first variant is the one you will see the most, which is where both of his wings glow. Wherein this is where these wings will hit 2 party members. They will hit the closest person to Kefka and the farthest person from Kefka. And these hits are basically tank busters. So they need to be your tanks. So how we do this, and how pretty much everyone does, is I will make sure that I am on the targeting ring of the boss, because that's really close, that I still haven't faced this way. Dax, the other tank, will, he'll just go off somewhere. Could be literally anywhere that is farther away from the rest of the party, which is located nice and tight behind Kefka's butt. So, everybody blows up their heads, and then they go to max melee range so they can continue to get auto attacks and do their attacks for the melee specifically. Pardon. And then I and Dax will get hit by Wings of Destruction. This is probably far from optimal, but for the sake of making sure we get past it, I've found that going into Shield Oath and popping a Sheltron is enough to survive the wing with plenty of health, whilst also taking the opportunity to do one aggro combo to make sure certain people don't take aggro later. So it's a dual bonus. It's to help my survivability and to help their survivability. So yeah. Dax goes off over there, he gets that explosion, which is over here, I get this one here. Everybody's oh so conveniently out of range. And yeah. So we would have one explosion, like, say, like right here, and one over here. But like I said, this outside one could be anywhere, really. It could honestly be right here and still be fine. Because everybody else is going to be, like, right here. And that's something we make use of to some extent. But yeah, so after that Wings of Destruction, he does an Ultima, so more raid damage, everybody gets healed up. And then, he does the same thing again. It's these 3 circles again, the 4 heads, plays out exactly the same. With one key difference, in that instead of a Wings of Destruction, he will do his gigantic, oh so big, massive raid hit, Light of Judgment. Wherein I will have Dax do the reprisal here, since as it is shown here, mine is on cooldown for the next couple seconds still, so I won't have time to do it. So he'll reprisal that, and I will throw up Passage of Arms, hopefully in time so that people actually get the buff, because it takes a couple seconds. Which they do, just in time. Big explosion, hurts quite a bit. Then we move on to the next phase of the fight, where we're back in the good old yellow arena. Wherein we get the oh-so-dreaded Shrine. So I'll let this play out a little bit before we go into detail. So, as we saw there, we have 3 sets of triangles. 3 sets of triangle pairs. So, let's see here. Is there actually a triangle? Yes, there is. So, we'll have, like, let's see, in this example, let's run it back a little bit. See, in this example, we have a triangle here, here, I think there's actually one set of 3 triangles, actually. You get one here, and the last set is like this. They come in these 3 sets because they explode in the order of which they come in. Whilst these are coming down, Kefka is doing his second variation of Wings of Destruction, which is a single half-room cleave based upon which wing is glowing. It's really simple. Now, shortly after he does that half-room cleave, the first set of triangles will explode, shown right there. Now, Trine is a really cheeky mechanic, because it doesn't explode in the pattern of which you see here. It explodes into little circles at the tips of the Trine. So, it's like this instead. This isn't the most accurate, but that's what's going on in the video right now. So this is the first set to explode. We're all gathered here in the middle here, still getting uptime, or at least I am. The rest of the group, bit wishy-washy of getting uptime at that point. I know it's safe, because I'm good. So with these exploding, this is going to be where we're going to be running to, because obviously there's going to be no triangles there anymore. So we go there once the half-room cleave happens. And Kefka will come over here with me. And once he's around in position here, or shortly after the last set of triangles explode, he will do his double Wings of Destruction. Wherein, much like in the first Forsaken, we have to have a close person and a far person. This can be a bit wishy-washy because of how positioning works. Like, if I have to go back in the middle for the first one, I'll have to do some funky tanking to make sure nobody's gonna get slapped by a big old purple AoE. So here we can see Dax is running off over here behind the party list. I'm on his targeting ring, much like before. Everyone else is getting behind him at max melee range. And of course, to note here, Trine, if you get hit by Trine, you get a very small damage down and a healing damage down. Ultimately, it's not a big deal, because it's only like 5%, if I recall correctly. So, it's not a big deal if people get hit by it, but of course, that's extra healing, and that's a little extra DPS to make up for later. I throw on Shield Oath and Sheltron just like before. I still have a fairly healthy amount of health, all things considered. Now, when moving the boss back to the middle, I put on Bulwark, because I can't get every little hit in, so I make sure that I'm not going to be getting hit as much. So any block chance only helps me out. I'm moving back to the middle. I do a similar thing that I do with 2. I go to a certain range, then turn him towards north. Throws down an Ultima. Frickin' crit auto afterwards, because, you know, why not? And thus comes the next mechanic, which will be Futures Numbered or Past Forgotten. You will choose randomly of these two. And what they are is, both of them are stacks. So, we got Kefka in the middle here. We have the party located here. I'm up here somewhere. I'm not going to make another circle. So in this case, he's doing Futures Numbered. So we all collapse together. Well, everybody else together. I move through him during the cast. He will rush down towards us and do the stack hit. Simple so far. What will happen afterwards is dictated based upon the name of the attack. If it is future, he will do a half-room cleave coming from his front, as such. So, we'll do that, and then friggin'... I don't know how I can do a half-room cleave thing with this. We'll do it. We'll just do a big square. Like this side of the arena is borked. Can't be there. You'll get a vuln and you'll probably die if you're not a tank. So if it's future, you stack up for the hit, and then the whole group runs through to his back so they don't get cleaved by the big old gigantic cleave. If it is past, it's pretty much the opposite. You'd stack up, but instead of running through him, the cleave will come from his backside, so you all hang out in front of him until it's over. Where instead of the whole group moving, I will then move to turn him back around. Because immediately afterwards, he will start casting another Tank Buster. Ultimate Embrace, a Tank Buster that normally you would have to share between your two tanks. And hurts. Oh boy, does it hurt. But, because I'm a cheeky paladin, I throw on Hallowed Ground so I don't have to deal with that damage. Zeroes out, like, you know, all nice and cool. Now, I Hallowed Ground as late as I do, like midway through the cast, so it makes sure that it's up for the hyperdrive that comes afterwards. So it's 2 Tank Busters back to back. So I'm going to get hit by that. I'm still invulnerable. During this point, as hyperdrive is casting, much like I did at the very beginning of the fight, now is finally the time where we tank swap back, and Dax tanks Kefka from here on out. He has a whole bunch of cooldowns up. I don't. Well, I still do. I have plenty, but for the sake of ease later on, he's going to be taking it from here on. So we do a swap, we do this nice little high five as we pass through his legs. Throws down an Ultima, we can just pretty much a free DPS point. Then comes Forsaken number 2. Arguably the most difficult Forsaken. So, just like before, I throw down a reprisal on this to mitigate the hit. Throw up Veil, so it will get put on people. Oh yeah, I never explained why I put on Veil afterwards. So, this is a little known fact about how shields work in the game. Is that shields, if an attack does a percentage of your health instead of normal damage, shields will persist. So, you may or may not have noticed back during Heartless Archangel that the shield stayed on, despite everybody's health being reduced to 1. So, that helps them, giving them a little extra buffer for taking their heads and not dying. Obviously, they'll still need healing, and they'll need probably shields from Soraya, but every little bit helps. I do more or less the same thing here, but this is for just more of straight up damage because the DPS are going to be taking a fair bit in the next set of mechanics. And just every little bit helps. So, oh boy. So, what happens here? So, to start off, we have two it's a square. That's not what I want. I want circles. We have 2 meteor circles on both the west and east of the boss, which also require 2 people, which is indicated by these two little dots here on the sides of the rings. So those require 2 people each, much like before. Now, the 2 DPS that are furthest away from Kefka at the time of Forsaken casting, or after it finishes casting, will get these prey markers, which you can kind of see here. I'll run it back slightly so you can see a little bit better. So yeah, there's one there. Lunatic, our red mage, has one right here. Gwyn, our bard, has one over here. They were furthest away, so they have these preys. And what these preys do is they're going to be dropping little filthy, dirty puddles. I believe there's 4 of them consecutively. So they need to deposit them around the arena whilst not staying in them too long. So what happens here? So we divide up our tanks and healers. So we have both of our tanks have our tanks here in the eastern puddle, while we have our healers over in the western puddle. See, our 2 ranged DPS, they kind of make their way over towards here because they want to work their way up towards north, and I'll explain that in a minute. The other 2 DPS, our melee, that are the closest to the boss, are going to get 5 consecutive AoEs in a row. These are just normal AoEs, they're the ones where you drop and then you get out so you don't get hit. So they're like right here. They're just doing their thing, doing damage. So this is kind of our starting position, how everybody gets there. So here we see those are the here's the AoEs from the melee DPS, here's the puddle from the ranged DPS. So we'd have... So how they do it, in order to get as much uptime as possible, they drop their puddles. The melee DPS do 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and then make their way towards north by putting 1 around here. Like, this isn't accurate, like, 100%, but this is more or less what they do. Meanwhile, the ranged DPS, they put they put their puddles like this. Whilst not actually putting them completely north, because all the DPS need to actually meet up at north for a final circle, which requires 4 people instead of just 2. So there's one up here. So that's what the DPS are doing. What are the tanks and healers doing at this time? So once the AoEs start dropping on the DPS, Kefka will cast Future's End or Past End. Now this is similar to his stack mechanic, but this time it is not a stack. Instead, he will split himself into 4 clones and slam into each of the tanks and healers, as you will see right now. See, there's 4 of them around here now. So while we have the DPS handling the north half of the arena, tanks and healers are down south here at C and whatnot. So while they're doing that, we get 4 Kefkas. You know, one bam, bam. They don't have to be this spread out, but they don't have to be close either. So they have 4 Kefkas. They hurt a little bit. It's no big deal. Now, much like the Future Past stack of before, this indicates where the half-room cleave is going to come from. In this case, we got Future's End. So the cleave is going to come from his front. We all spread out down here at the south end so we can aim those cleaves off of the map. So in this case, it was Future. So we stay here, keep him facing the outside until we see this cast, All Things Ending. As soon as you see that cast, that means you're free to go move. Because what happens now is there are 2 more meteor circles located at B and D, east and west. So once All Things Ending starts casting, the tanks and healers will work their way over to these 2 meteors, which, much like before, required 2 people. Meanwhile, the DPS at this point are all meeting up at north for that 4-person meteor. There goes the half-room cleaves. And then, what happens is after these 3 meteors, the north, east, and west meteors get satisfied, we get 2 additional meteors. Yeah, one about here, and one about here. Again, requiring 2 people. Now, once the one at north goes off, one of the 4 DPS we marked with this stack marker right here. Which means they gotta haul it all the way down here so they can meet up with the 2 tanks here and share that split. Meanwhile, at the same time, they gotta come down here because there is a proximity AoE happening at north. So they have to get away, and we stack about... Again, we'll put it... What's a good color? Well, we'll say the stack marker is right around here. Actually, you know what? That's not. I need to make it a bit bigger because the 2 tanks have to be in this meteor whilst also sharing the stack marker because they have to fulfill that. The healer's got to do it over here. Like, I don't know of really any other way you could possibly do this, so this definitely isn't something unique to how we do it as a raid group, because, yeah, it's such a specific number of mechanics. But yeah, and that stack marker is more or less the last thing, because afterwards is, of course, the Light of Judgment. Now, I'm not sure what happened to Lunatic here. He just kind of blew up I'm not looking over in that direction, but he's dead right there. I don't know, maybe he... I don't know, I have no clue. So, healers get him up immediately. He's our one death for the clear, which thankfully we can get through it with just one clear. So, after Forsaken number 2, let's get rid of all these markers. So, at this point, so Kefka was right around here. We move him over towards B at this point, because it's the closest edge on a cardinal, because, much like at the very start of the fight, do a couple autos and then do Celestriad again. And we handle this the same way as before, with the only difference being now we're at B instead of A. It functions the same way. It's got the plus shape, which remains static. The first ice AoE spawns underneath him, so we just have him at a cardinal. It behaves the same way. We do that, and there's nothing different about it. As you can see right about now, this is when our potions are about to come off cooldown, so it's about time to use them again to get in that extra smidge of DPS. Now, after Celestriad, he'll do his other type of Wings of Destruction, which it's another half room cleave, but it can be either or of his wings. So it's a simple matter of just get on the side that is not death. And after the second Forsaken is when we get a full LB3, and we use it sometime between Celestriad and the next major mechanic. He'll do an Ultima here, and then we reposition him into the middle. Face him north just for consistency. And then we do Trine number 2. Now, this trine is different from the first one, because instead of several small triangles, it's going to be one big triangle. There will be one big triangle always in the middle. Like, that's a staple. What's random is the 3 additional triangles that spawn. Wherein you'll either have what we got right here, which you'll have all of the other safe spots have triangles in them. So the entire exterior of the map is not safe, because as we covered before, each of these tips is going to be a circle AoE. So none of this area is safe on the outside. But you know where is safe? Right smack dab in the middle. Because there's not going to be a circle AoE there. Despite the fact of us being inside of what would normally be a get out of this AoE, instead, that part's not actually dangerous. So, as will be shown, we get into the middle, and there's this tiny little triangular safe spot where there is not circle AoEs. Now, alternatively, instead of having the 3 triangles on the exterior, you'll have, like, for example, you'll have 2 on the exterior, and you'll have 1 in the middle. And this is really simple what you'd assume you'd have to do. You go to the one spot that doesn't have a triangle. Now it's important to stay as a group here, because as you saw, he does another future past stack there. And right here, it's another futures numbered, so he slams us, and we have to quickly discern as a group where he's facing, which in this case, he's still facing north. So everybody goes to the butt, where he do his slap. Right afterwards is a double Wings of Destruction. We're in this time, now that Dax is main tanking, he will stay close to the boss while I, run off to the middle of nowhere. Sheltron Shield Oath, just like before. I run back in, and here is where we will do our next tank swap. Because Ultimate Embrace is casting now. And Ultimate Embrace, as we covered earlier, hurts. Hurts quite a bit. So we would have to share that. Luckily, Warrior is very strong. And he has Home Gang to take this Ultimate Embrace. I provoke during the cast because I have to be main tank afterwards. Because after this Ultimate Embrace is, much like before, a Hyperdrive. So I provoke, he shirks me, he's got Home Gang. Here comes the Hyperdrive. I put on Sentinel, Sheltron, Shield Oath, and I completely zero out that Hyperdrive. Actually, did I? Or did I zero out the auto attack? Oh yeah, I still take damage, but I block. It's only 13k. I have bleed now, but that bleed's not going to hurt very much because of how much I mitigated it. So that's how we handle that. Got through. Did I miss the Ultima, or did it already happen? Or is it gonna happen? Yeah, it already happened. So then we move into the final Forsaken pattern, which is Forsaken number 3. Same deal as before, wherein I reprisal it, throw up, frickin' Veil, if I remember to. Yep, there it is. So what's not visible right now is the Tower of God statue from the first phase of Kefka, so we'll put that as a... It's at north, so this is the Tower of God. It's this little oval right here. And what's going to spawn in addition are three meteor circles. We'll have... one will be here, one will be here, and one will be here. These two on the outside requiring 2 people, and the one down here requiring 4. Now, what's happening with these yellow lines are tethers coming from the tower. And the tower will choose, looks like 4 people to tether, and those tethers are going to be knocked back, something that is shown earlier in the fight. So we'll have like bam, 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 and whatever. Bam. So these 4 people are going to be knocked back. I think, am I one who's chosen right now? No, Dax is. So these people are going to be knocked back. So anybody who's got a tether, they need to basically run back up towards the tower so they get knocked into their meteor circle, unless they have any anti-knockback. Dax doesn't have any, so he's going to be knocked into the circle with me. There's an Ultima casting right now, so raid damage. I go into Shield Oath and pop Rampart because, oh, there's our good old friend Ultimate Embrace again. And this one, we don't got any invulns for, so we have to share this one. So, Shield Oath, Rampart, Sheltron. That's what I had at this time to survive it. And that's some pretty impressive mitigation, all things considered. So there's the tower. And next what happens is... let's see what we'll get. So now there's only 2 meteors. And there's going to be 8 tethers instead. Now this mechanic with the tethers was, again, earlier in normal Kefka. But how this one works is, so anyone who has tethered from the left side of the statue, or the higher up part that's like Heavenly Woman, they're going to be confused. So they will run towards any nearby party members and kill them. Like, they get a damage up, like everybody dies. People from the right side with this set of tethers will be put to sleep. So they'll be unable to react to the confused people running to murder them. Yeah. So, these 2 meteor circles are important because, though they do technically do 0 damage if they're satisfied, it's still damage, and any damage will wake you up from being asleep. So, people with the sleep tethers will... The 4 people with the sleep tethers will go into the innermost part of the circle. The 2 circles, we'll count this as 2 and 2 each. So as soon as the... Wait. There we go. So these are the sleep people with these 2 tethers. They'll be in the circles whereas the people with confuse will be going to the cardinals. So the people on the inside have enough time to move in after they're woken up. And that way the people with the confused tethers don't cleave each other. And I'll have this play out. So the people that get put to sleep will move into the middle so they don't get cleaved after they wake up. Like this. Now during there we did another tank swap because... I forget why. I think it's because... Yeah, it's because by the time the next hyperdrive comes around, I'll have Sentinel back up, and Dex has Vengeance right now. So he won't have a strong enough cooldown to handle that hyperdrive. And I'd be better suited off. Designing cooldown rotation for this fight was, some of the hardest I ever had to strategize ahead of time. So we move in, Ultima casts, and what happens next should be very familiar. It's the first Forsaken pattern again. Wherein Heartless Archangel casts, you got 3 meteors in the middle, and your 4 heads. We handle this the same as before, with the only exception is that I'm the off-tank right now. And then there's a 4th meteor. Or, yeah, a 4th meteor. That appears in the south. No, that's a line, that's not a circle. And this requires 4 people in it, as is evidenced by the 4 dots on the outside. So, in a similar vein to handling Wings of Destruction before, instead of just being at max melee range, the 4 DPS also have to be in this circle. So I run out to get the wing. I clemency myself to ease the healing. The 4 DPS got in their circle and satisfied it. Another Ultima cast. And the statue is again up at north. This time, however, though, it will be the second form of the statue, wherein it'll be one of 2 orbs. It'll be a purple orb that half-room cleaves the left side, or a yellow orb that half-room cleaves the other side. Whilst this is about to happen, Kefka is going to do a half-room cleave himself. So, if Kefka chooses the side that is the opposite side of the statue's one, you really don't have much of a chance. So, what we do, and what most people do, it's not what we do, it's what you do in this situation, is you turn Kefka to face either east or west. That way, his half-room cleave will be either the north or the south, whilst the statue will be either east or west. That way, there will be a single quarter of the arena that will be safe from AoEs. Where in this case, it is the southeast. Because it was the purple. It's really hard to see, especially on this video. But when it spawns, like there, I see it briefly, and you can see it at the top of the screen right now. It's the purple orb. And something that's also not evident right now because I have the video muted is the 2 orbs make different sounds when they conjure. The yellow orb will make this rocky, like, crushy noise because it's of, like, an earth-based attack. But the purple one will make this, like freaking kind of noise because it's like gravity or something. It's something that I've kind of recognized off of hearing alone, and that helps a bit because, dear lord, is it hard to see that while freaking Ultima is going off. So the 2 half-rim cleaves go off. So we have this 1/4 of the arena right here. Now this is again something we need to work on as a group, but there's still a part of his hitbox that's targetable right now that we can hit, but everybody just kind of runs away because they're scared of the cleaves. Which is fair. But you can get a little extra DPS there. Now, the 3rd Forsaken lasts so long that my Reprisal comes off of cooldown. So I use my Reprisal here so that Dax can save it for an upcoming mechanic. Because here's the Light of Judgment. Reprisal it. I don't throw up wings here because I forget and I'm bad. Dax has the boss right now, as he has. And then we move into the pretty much the final set of mechanics of the fight. Wherein here we have Trine again. And it's the small Trines. Small Trines and a half-room cleave, just like before. The only difference is, instead of a Wings of Destruction... Oh, wait, no. Nope, I'm wrong. There is a Wings of Destruction. But... Instead of an Ultima afterwards, there's an Ultimate Embrace. So, I move out to get the wings. And then I come screaming back in. Shield Oath, Rampart, and Sheltron to share it with Dax again. Now, we originally agreed he was supposed to reprisal this, but I think he forgets when we get to this because it's such a stressful time. And I think I also gave him an intervention. I completely forgot I did that. And so we tank swap again because, as I mentioned earlier, a hyperdrive is going to be coming up soon, and my Sentinel is going to be up by then. So after the small Trine comes the big Trine right afterwards, which is the big Trine plus the future past deck. Here's a past forgotten, the first one we've seen the whole fight. So we found the safe spot at the edge. We stay in front of him because the cleave comes behind. Now I stay here, everybody else moves because there's the hyperdrive. Now actually, so I was wrong. Freaking my Sentinel was not up in time. But Shield Oath alone was good, plus shielding. So here are 2 back-to-back Ultimas, so just a whole lot of raid damage that happens all at once here. But nothing our healers can't handle. After those, I'm moving back to the middle. And here we are at 18%, probably 17, yeah. 18%, and he casts his final Forsaken. I called it the final Forsaken pattern before because this one is the exact same thing again. It's the 3rd Forsaken all over again up until the very last moments. Completely identical, nothing different. So, I reprisal it like usual, throw up Veil, and we'll just kind of watch this play out again. The statues showing up behind us for the knockback tethers. I get one this time. I use Tempered Will so I don't get knocked back. Throw up Rampart, Shield Oath, Sheltron for the Ultimate Embrace. Barely hurt. We tank swap. We get the sleep tethers again as tanks and healers. The DPS go out. We collapse back in for the Ultima. The normal first Forsaken happens. I'm going to take a drink here because I've been talking for a freaking hour and a half at this point. Move in to dodge the skulls. As the skulls are exploding, I move out to Sheltron the Wings of Destruction, heal myself, run back in. The Ultima happens. Here comes the half-room cleaves. We face him to D. It's southeast again as our safe spot. Could be any of the 4 ones. And here we have 4 Ultimas in a row. And these Ultimas get stronger each cast. We get our LB3 there, we use it. By the time the 3rd one comes around, I reprisal it, because this one hurts a lot. And for the final one, I use Passage of Arms. I popped my last pot. We're at 2%, 1%, and right there is his Enrage. And about 5 seconds before we die, we get the clear. And oh boy, was that stressful. Heart was going, everybody happy. The end. Yeah, we can make it through with a couple damage downs and 1 death. So we were definitely behind a little bit. Yeah. That's God Kefka explained casually. Let's see. Is there any things I can make note of? I think I covered them as we went along. Let's see. I've been watching this the whole time. I haven't actually chatted off. I had anything. Nope. No chat. But yeah. Things hurt. But we get through it. Like, freaking everybody is, like, super happy. I just kind of exhaled a yeah at the time. So it wasn't exactly as outwardly happy, but on the inside, it was nothing but relief. Because at this point, to circle back to the original point of all this, because now, finally, cleared a relevant raid tier before better gear came out. We took the challenge and beat it. Now granted, most of us were 370, near best in slot gear, which had to make up for a general kind of lack of DPS. Obviously, we're not the best raid group. There's room for all of us to improve. So, yeah. We did what we had to do. It took us a while. Had to gear up quite a bit. But we did it. We did it. We cleared the tier. Bunch of people, like, a good half of these people we never met before the static. So, bunch of strangers coming together, putting the time in, putting up with scheduling conflicts, people having children to take care of, getting sick, and any variety of problems, people coming to interrupt. We pushed through, and really, that's what really matters in the end. That we pushed through and we did it. We cleared this tier. And of course, we gotta get our screenshot for our clear to prove that we did it. Not that I wasn't recording the whole time, or streaming rather. But just as a memento, just in case things get lost, I suppose. But yeah, I guess that's kind of all I really wanted to cover, really. Dude. Yeah. I suppose that's really it. I guess I would have taken questions had I actually looked at chat, but nobody was really there anyways. Eh. I don't think there's really much else to say, I guess. Yeah, I'm at a loss. So, yeah, that was my retrospective on our getting finally truly to endgame. Again, pushing Ultimate aside. For now, of course. Half the raid group didn't really express interest in doing much else, so unfortunately we won't be tackling Ultimate as our static. But you might do something. We're definitely, obviously, going to do the next raid tier together. All the way in 4.4, as many months away as that is. So, yeah, in the meantime, it'll mainly just be re-clears, which I may or may not stream, we'll see. Otherwise, might try to get a group together to maybe go into Ultimate. I may say that we're casual to mid-core, but I like the challenge. I feel I can push myself further. But if anything, really though, it's not really about the Ultimate. It's about getting them mounts and them nice glowy weapons. But I do suppose that is it. We shall now rest. Rest for now. Since I've officially called the deal of me being a Catboy over with. As you've probably been seeing this whole time, we have the return of Genji. But that's it. As I've said many of times before during our countless hours of raiding, I do suppose, for now, and until next time, it's over. Till next time, farewell.